Harihi Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanao Bhunaktu Sahaviryan Karavavahai Tejasvi Navadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay. So reading from Mahabharata, then Gatotkacha born and Baka slain. So now that how you say, they had the pastime with Hidimba and Hidimbi, and now that Hidimbi and Bhima, then they were married and had a child, Gatotkacha. I think Gatotkacha means one with a bald head, pot-like head. Because normally the Rakshasas have this big shock of red, orange kind of hair, just stands up like that. But he just was completely bald like that. So he's a little bit different than the other Rakshasas. He also had an interest in, the Shastra, pious activities and all that because of his father. So then, now where they traveled, they left the mountain range, they traveled. They studied the scriptures, they would perform their sadhana and everything. And so then, as they're going one day, as they sat in the forest by their sacred fire, Vyasadeva came to see them. After being received with due worship, the rishi sat down and said, I have been aware of the Kauravas' unjust behavior towards you. Although I see both the Kauravas and yourselves equally, I feel a greater affection for you brothers due to your misfortune. I have therefore come here wishing to do you some good. Right? So these great sages, they see everyone with equal vision, but the point is someone who needs help, then they'll put that effort there. And someone who's making trouble, then, if it's not within their duty, they don't get involved. If it is, then they'll do something. But it's not based on that this one's good, that one's bad. It's just a matter of what would be the appropriate way to interact for that particular individual. So therefore, because the Pandavas, they're in the distressful condition, therefore then he sees them this way. We're always looking, because they're devotees and all that. Vyasadeva's looking at the position that they're all living entities, all the spirit soul. And so that way you see equally. Vyasadeva informed them of a nearby village called Ekachakra. He instructed them to live there for some time, saying that he would come again to give them further directions. Right? So they'll go in there and stay for some time, and then when it's time to do something else, Vyasadeva will come again. So then they know that they'll go and stay there until Vyasadeva comes. The rishi then reassured the sorrowing Kunti. Her sons would in time rule the world, right? Because he knows how it'll play out. So he's saying, no, they'll rule the world. Everything will work out, but it doesn't mean that there won't be some difficulty now. So that's always the position with the devotees, is that since the material world's always going up and down in its arrangements, some nice arrangements, not nice arrangements, like that, for the devotee, they just go through this because ultimately everything always works out. Because the main thing is if one becomes surrendered to Krishna, absorbed in Krishna, becomes a devotee of Krishna, that's the perfection. The virtuous Yudhishthira, protected by his powerful brothers, would certainly become king, right? So protected by his brothers, that means that they'll all be there. Soon he would perform the great Rajasuya sacrifice, establishing himself as the emperor of the entire world, right? So this is not something that's even come up. It's not until afterwards that this comes up, and then Yudhishthira will perform this. But that's after some time. The sage personally led them to Ekachakra. He brought them to a Brahmin's house, where they were received as guests. Vyasadeva then took his leave, telling them again that he would return to them before long. The Pandavas surveyed their new abode. The little village of Ekachakra was situated amid beautiful woodlands. The Brahmin had kindly given the brothers 2 rooms in his house for their residence. He had taken a vow that he would always receive any travelers who came to his door. By day they went about the village begging for food. And due to their gentleness and humility, they soon became dear to the people, right? So even though they're Kshatriyas and so powerful, the qualities that they have, just going out, being humble, because they're living the life now of a Brahmin and that, so they are applying these qualities of the devotees. And so everybody is so, found them to be so wonderful. Same thing was in Hastinapur. Everybody liked them. That, except Duryodhana. He didn't like them because everyone liked the Pandavas. He wanted everybody should like him. Right? As a kid, everybody likes you. But as you grow up, if you don't have good character, people don't necessarily like you. But the Pandavas, grown up, everyone liked them. So, yes. Everyone accepted them as wandering ascetics, right? Because they had such good qualities. This ascetics will have all those Brahminical qualities. So they grew up their life living with ascetics when they were young. Then they've gone out. They've always had the ascetics there in the palace, the Brahmins, and that. Then they go out in the forest again, and then they are dealing with them. So you see is that they do well with them. So they know the lifestyle, they know that. And being devotees, they have all the good qualities anyway that the ascetics would have. Everyone accepted them as wandering ascetics, staying briefly in the village, and they gladly gave them alms, right? Because they liked their qualities, so everyone wanted to give them something and all that. Every night the brothers offered their mother whatever alms they had collected. She would then prepare their meal. Half of the food was given to Bhima, and the rest was divided among the other 4 brothers and Kunti, right? So whatever they collected, then that would be cooked or arranged or whatever needed to be done. Whatever was the volume was, half of that would be given to Bhima, right? Because it would be unfair if he took more than half. And the other half they divided amongst, the other 4 brothers and Kunti, so by 5. So they'd get 1/10, he'd get 50%. He was starving. So even that half was not enough for him. But we don't hear that the others were having any problem. So they were doing okay like that. So, but for Bhima, then we'll see as it comes up, that makes it for a very amusing aspect of the pastime because of this. So that's why then you look at it, someone may say, no, but why isn't it divided equally? But it is divided equally. Because the point is equal means according to what you require. Not equal means everybody gets the same thing. Otherwise, if we want to make it equal, then we see in China at one time, if you go back, like 20, 30 years, then they only had one kind of clothes, a particular kind of pant and shirt, and only one size. So it was size 36. So if you were smaller or shorter, you rolled up the sleeves and rolled up the pant legs and it was baggy. And if you were bigger, then it was shorter and tight. If you were really big, then they did make size 42. But you had to be really big for that. So then you could say that's equality, or you give everybody the same. So the dog gets 5 chapatis and the elephant gets 5 chapatis. Or the elephant gets 100 kilos of food and the dog has to eat 100 kilos of food, right? Or the dog has to eat sugar cane because that's what the elephant's eating. So that's the whole point, is the concept of equality means every living entity has their quota, has their nature. That's given by Krishna. And so then whatever is that nature, that's what's supposed to be taken care of. Not that, no, it has to be exactly the same for everybody. That's impersonal. Personal means everyone being an individual, having a particular nature, therefore what they require is specific. But saying, no, everybody gets the same thing, that's fine, but it's impersonal. And generally those who say it all should be the same, it's never the same. They never do that. It's just an idea. If I say everyone should get the same, means I get what you get. I don't want something else also that you have. I just want that aspect of what you have. Does that make sense? So, in other words, people will have their obligations or their duties, means what they're supposed to do. Then they may have their rights, what benefits they get, right? So I have my obligations and I have my benefits. So when we argue over equality, we're arguing over benefits. We're not arguing over responsibility. Because what it is I want all of my benefits and the other person's benefits. But I want their benefits without the responsibility. They should perform the responsible activity. Does that make sense? And even better is they do my responsibility. So I get the benefit of my activity, I get the benefit of the other person's. And the other person, he has to take the responsibility for his and the responsibility for mine. So that's not equal. Equal means each one according to their nature, like this. It's guna and karma. So what is the nature, what is their ability? That's how it should be. It's not this external oneness. That's impersonalism. It's individual like that. Okay, so therefore it was an equal distribution, right? Someone shouldn't say, oh, he's eating too much. When the brothers went out begging, a different one of them would remain behind each day to protect Kunti, right? So 4 would go out, 1 would stay back. One particular day, it was Bhima's turn to stay back. He was sitting with his mother when they heard loud crying in the house. Hearing the piteous lamentations, Kunti's heart was moved, and she spoke to Bhima. My dear Bhima, due to this Brahman's kindness, we are living here peacefully with no fear of Duryodhana and his brothers. I am always thinking how we might repay this gentle Brahman, right? So Kshatriyas, they're not supposed to live by charity and everything like that. So that this Brahman is extending that, then that is something that, they're taking just because of the political position they're in, right? Because they're having to accept the lifestyle of Brahmins to be incognito. So then they do those duties. And so in this way they're accepting. But they feel we owe this Brahmin something. Kunti then, Kshatriya, they want to take care of the Brahmins. But at the same time, they can't show as the Kshatriya feature. So they have to do something that is giving them some benefit that they've given, that they've shown to Kunti and her sons. At the same time, it has to be through some way that people won't know who they are. A virtuous man should return the good done to him with an even greater good. Perhaps now our chance has come, right? So someone does you good, you do greater good, right? Not they do you good and you do less, because otherwise they got less and it disappears. So therefore, we see is that when it comes to the pious things, to the good things, someone does something nice, you do something nicer, and that way it increases. So we should avoid the opposite thing, one of the boys pokes another boy, so then instead of poking him back or doing something less, he has to punch him. And then because this one punched him, now the other guy jumps on him. So in other words, instead of the pious things are supposed to increase, but instead of doing that, it's kind of like this roughness is increased. So that always creates problems. So we see this is the actual what is supposed to increase. Kunti could understand that the Brahmin had fallen into some great distress. Bhima told her to ascertain the cause, right? Because she being a woman, she could freely go in and move in the house. So he being a man, he can't just walk in when the Brahmin's there with his wife and his family unless he's invited. Because they have their rooms, so they stay there. So, at meal times or whatever is the thing that they come together, what's the formal occasion? Because it is the Brahmin's house. So you have to, if you're a guest in someone's house, you have to act that it's always their house. Even though they say, no, you do what you want. Still, you should always be very careful to not do what you should always be very careful. Like Manu's talking about that someone has a particular place where they sit. Like that, especially women, they have their spot where they like to sit. So you have to observe that and not use that space. Like the head of the house always sits in this chair. You don't sit in that chair. You sit somewhere else. So they're able to live their life in their normal way, and you add yourself into their life. Not that you come in and just take over like that. So therefore, then the women can move freely through the house. So the men, they have to be very careful. Does that make sense? Just like the Brahmins can move through like this. The Brahmins can move into the palace as they please. Others can't. They have to follow all the etiquettes. So in this case, being in the Brahman's house, you wouldn't do it because that's Brahman. The Brahman's man to man here. So, but Kunti, she could move through. So if she goes and she hears and she says, then it goes much more naturally. Kunti slipped quietly into the inner apartments where the Brahmin lived with his family. She stood unnoticed by the door while the Brahmin and his wife and children sat with downcast faces. As Kunti watched, the Brahmin said to his wife, "Fie upon this wretched life, which affords one only misery. To live is to experience nothing but disease and pain, pursuing in turn religion, wealth, and pleasure. One endeavors much, but receives little happiness. Everything should lead to salvation, but that is an impossible goal to achieve. Those who desire riches suffer, while those who have riches suffer even more. Alas, why do I live?" So he's pointing out that the material world is always going to be difficult, because if you don't want anything, then you don't have really much. And so in that way, you don't really suffer much, but it's not necessarily a comfortable situation. But it's okay. But if you want something, then you have to work very hard for it. Then when you get it, whether you enjoy it like you're thinking, or whether you get the volume you have, so, or you want to protect it. So there's so many anxieties that come up like that. So therefore, the man with nothing is having difficulty, but the man with something has more difficulty. Kunti listened in silence as the Brahmin continued to condemn himself and his misfortune. He spoke of the terrible danger that had befallen them. His wife wept as he censured her, blaming their present predicament upon her wish to remain in the village due to affection for her dead relatives. Right? So she must have been from that village and all that, and so they were there. And so then the Brahmin must have brought up at some point that they would like to move, we should move from this place. But then she said, no, it's the family, we're from this place and all this and that. So the husband, being sensitive to the needs and desires of his wife, then goes along with that. But we see now, because of that, there's some problem that is coming up. And so he's saying, because of this, we should have moved. But at the same time, you see, it's all going on very gently. So that's the point, is between the partners like this, is if there is something they want to say, it's still said very comfortably, very nicely, like that. The Brahmin held his head in anguish. "How can I abandon you to save my own life? Your parents gave you to me. It is my duty to protect you. You have always served me and borne my children. I can in no way let you go. Nor can I abandon my only son or daughter. I shall go, or maybe we should all die together." Right? So something's unfolding here, is that somebody's going to die here. So he's saying he can't allow his wife to go because she's done so much wonderful things, taking care and being there as a partner in this whole thing. And then the children are there and all these things. He can't let the children go because his parents, then you're raising the children. So then he's thinking that therefore he should be the one that's dying, or they can all die together. But it's not that they, one or the other. The Brahmin fell to the ground, sobbing. His wife lifted him gently and said, "This lamentation does not befit a learned man like yourself. No one should lament inevitable death, nor should you or our children die. I shall go. Indeed, a woman's highest duty lies in sacrificing her life to serve her husband. Undoubtedly, such an act will confer upon me regions of eternal bliss." Right? So here she's saying is, no, then you don't go, the children don't go, all go. Because the woman anyway is that she is coming from another house, she comes into her husband's house, and then from that, if somehow or another she can dedicate her life there and any good that comes from that. So she's saying if she sacrifices her life, that's definitely a very pious activity. The Brahmin going is just the proper thing he's trying to protect, but her going is a great sacrifice. And so then, that will take her to, the higher regions of that. Kunti was curious. The Brahmin's wife continued to implore her husband to allow her to die. She said that neither she nor her children could possibly survive in his absence. Right? So if he's not there, then how would she survive? And the children. Well, he'll to go on, and he can take care of the children. So she's saying that would be a better situation. If she were left a widow, she would become a prey to dishonorable men, who would seek her just as crows descend upon a piece of meat left on the ground. Right? So she's pointing out that she'll be alone in that, and all these improperly trained men will come around and try to take advantage of the situation. So she's saying she won't be properly taken care of. She can't take care of the kids. So therefore, of this, the kids shouldn't go, and the kids should be protected, but she alone won't do that. The husband alone can do that. How then could she protect her 2 young children and keep them on the path of truth and virtue? She folded her hands and begged her husband for the permission to leave. He could then accept another wife, while she would earn undying religious merits by her final service. So the family would go on, he could marry again, children would be taken care of and all this, but at the same time as she would get, how you say this, the benefits of such great religious activity. The Brahmin sat with his head in his hands and made no reply, right, because he just doesn't want any of this. Then his daughter began to speak. Father, why are you sorrowful when you have me? Allow me to go and thus save yourself. It is the child's duty to save the parent, right, because that's why they're called putra or putri. Put means hell and tra means to save from. So they save the parents. So she's saying that's what children do, they save the parents. This is why the wise have called one's child putra, one who delivers the parents from hell. My duty to my forefathers is to bear a son to offer them the sacred shraddha. But by the grace of providence, I may now serve my forefathers by saving my father. Right? So, in other words, she has a duty to the forefathers. And in this way, she can, by saving the father, then that will carry on everything for the forefathers. Right? So she's saying, see, this is my duty. And the wife has already said, no, this is my duty. So they're bringing out various duties. And in other words, in a very wonderful way in the story, then Vyasadev's telling different stories that the story itself tells in a practical way what are the duties, rather than just a list of duties or someone saying, oh, this would be nice or that. You see it in real life situations, because otherwise, if you explain the duty, sometimes we may have a problem applying it into our practical life, our practical situation. So Mahabharata so nicely is showing how people actually applied this, because otherwise we can say, oh, it's all nice philosophy, we're not the body and that. But, when this happens, that's why these stories are given. Oh, Father, you will one day have to abandon me, right? Because she'll marry and go to another family. Therefore, do not hesitate to do so now. Her point is, I'll be lost to the family anyway, because I'm going to, when I grow up, get married and leave and go to another family. So, therefore, you're going to lose me anyway, so why not now? And my duty is to have a son who will carry on the Shraddha rites, but I myself now directly can save my father, who is, within that line. And so both aspects have been taken care of. The girl wept along with her parents. The Brahma's small son then said in broken speech, none of you should cry. Send me, and I shall kill the cannibal Rakshasa in a moment. The boy smiled and brandished a piece of long grass as if it were a weapon. Although they were grief-stricken, they all laughed at the young boy's words. Right, so he's, seeing the mood that they're trying to do something, so he comes up with some because he knows the Brahman, he can fight, or the Brahmins have potency. So he says this, very innocently, very nicely. And because of that, it's very much appreciated because of just the mood and all that, and the sincerity and the relationship and all that. So that aspect then is appreciated. And then in that, there'll be that moment where they'll all laugh and everything like that. It's not a hearty laugh, but it's just an appreciation of the relationship laugh. Kunti took the sudden change of mood as an opportunity to inquire about the cause of their distress, right? Because how can you just walk in? But suddenly now the mood's changed just for that moment. You have to grab that moment, and then she can just come in, because now they've focused on something else, so you can come in and catch, because otherwise they may be, oh no, I don't want to talk now, or don't feel, no, but they've changed the mood, so now it's open for discussion. Could she do anything to help? The Brahmin replied that no human being could remove their grief. A powerful Rakshasa named Baka protected the country where they lived from enemies. He had long terrorized the people, who found no protection from their weak king. The Rakshasa used to come whenever he wanted and kill them for his food. Finally, the people went to Baka and proposed that if he would stop attacking them at will, then each week one of them would go to him with a large cartload of food. In turn, he should protect them from attackers. The cannibal agreed, but he demanded that he also eat the man who delivered the food. Right? So they were being disturbed by this Rakshasa. There's people coming from other places and bothering them, and the king was too weak. He wasn't taking care. So then one day they went to Bhakti and said, listen, you're coming in and catching people and eating them. Listen, why don't you do this? We'll bring you a cartload of food once a week, and then, you don't bother us, and you keep away the people that would come and bother the village from outside. So Bhakti agreed to that, but the person that brought the cart, he says, I'll eat them also, right? Because he's a Rakshasa. It wasn't exactly what they were hoping for, but at least it's better than indiscriminately comes in and then catches so many people. The Brahmin told Kunti that the turn of each man in their country came only after many years. Tomorrow was his turn, right? So it would go around family to family like that. So it was big enough that it would take some years before it would come around. But now it's come to their turn. He did not know what to do. He could not leave his young family alone. So it's not like the son is grown and married, the daughter is married, his husband and wife are vanaprastha or this or that kind of thing. But it's that they're young. So the children, you see the boy is the girl's unmarried, so she's quite young. The boy is just speaking in broken speech, so he's very small, like 3 years old or 4 years old, like that. Nor could he send them, he could not leave his young family alone, nor could he send them to their deaths. Therefore, they would all go to meet the demon. He was just thinking, we'll all go together, we'll all take the cart out, and if he eats them all, what to do, because they can't live without each other, so then they'll go together. So perhaps Bhakti would show compassion and spare them because he went, all together and all that, so then he might say, okay, what to do. And at the same time, or he might eat them all. But in any case, because he eats them all at once, they're all gone. Kunti said, I see a means by which you may be delivered from this fear. Although you have but 2 children, I have 5 sons. Therefore, let one of them go with the Rakshasa's tribute. Right? The tribute is the food, but it's also the person goes along with it, right? The Brahmin was shocked. I could never cause the death of a guest and a Brahmin to save my own life, right? So he's saying they're a guest, so guests are always received and respected. And at the same time, as a Brahmin, you couldn't do that. So here's Brahmins and the guests, so it just is against the religious principles. Even the most sinful man would not do this. Rather, one should sacrifice himself and his children for the sake of a Brahmana. Kunti was grave. I am of the same opinion that Brahmins should always be protected. But you need not fear for my son. The Rakshasa will not be able to kill him. He is powerful and knows the science of mantras. Right? Because he doesn't say he's just strong and can just kill him with his bare hands. He'll say is that but with mantras he can do it. Right? Because Brahmins use mantras. Kunti told the Brahmin that she had already seen her son kill a powerful Rakshasa, right? So Hidimba before. Bhakti would prove no problem to him. She asked the Brahmana not to disclose to anyone else what she had told him, right? So don't tell anyone because you don't want anyone to know that Bhima went. Because otherwise the word will get around in the village that the Rakshasa has been killed. And so if they say is that, yeah, these Brahmins were traveling, 5 Brahmins were traveling with their mother, and the very big one, he went out and took there and killed the demon, then who are we talking about here? Right? Because the Pandavas are there. They either died, or if they're not, they're incognito. And if they're incognito, then now they're hiding as Brahmins, so you don't want the word to go out. So that's why he said, don't tell anyone. But she says it from this way. Don't disclose to other one what she had told him. If others learned of her son's powers, they would harass him for his knowledge. And the power of the mantras would be diminished if they were given to others, right? Because sometimes in the tantric system, you have this kind of ideas, you have it, then when you give it to someone else, it reduces in you, then they have it and all this. It's not like the spiritual mantras where it's the unlimited chit potency, so you have it, this full potency, but you give to others, it has full potency. So unlimitedly it can be given out, and unlimitedly it has full power. But you're dealing with these things. So like killing the Rakshasas and that'll be generally be stuff from Atharva Veda, be from the tantric stuff like that. And so therefore it works on these, it has these material limitations. The Brahmin looked carefully at Kunti's expression. She was obviously speaking the truth, right? Because he was just checking if she's just saying that to be nice because they're trying to be nice guests or nice people, or she actually meant it. Her son must surely possess some extraordinary powers. With tears in his eyes, he assented to her suggestion, right? Because then that means that, being a Brahmin, then Krishna is taking care and protecting. And so then this all worked out. So we see that this is, a reason that they went and stayed at this house and everything. So then, one, they could rid the village of this Rakshasa, and two, he's someone who really takes care of guests and all that. So they would be very comfortable. Okay, we'll say this one. Kunti went to Bhima and told him everything. She asked him to go to Baka. Bhima agreed at once, right? Because otherwise he's just sitting around going out begging and everything like this. His eyes lit up at the thought that he would be able to exercise his strength while at the same time show their gratitude to the gentle Brahman and his family, right? Because that was the whole point, is let's benefit this family. As Kshatriyas, they should take care. So now he's able to take care of this Brahmin and benefit them for what they've done. At the same time, he can use his strength because he likes doing these things. So for him, it's some just good, clean fun like that. Okay, so then we'll end here. And then next we'll see is the Pandavas, they come back and then they hear about this and then those discussions. And then we'll hear about what happened with Baka. Om Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.